The group debate today is divided into pros and cons regarding aspects on the topic technology threatens the future of special education and ABA. The group will examine both sides of this issue. Each person in the group will touch on various parts surrounding the topic, such as quality of life, professional and ethical dilemmas, political, economic, financial, and societal factors, theoretical perspectives, labeling, and eligibility. The ongoing debate over the use of technology in education takes on many diverse viewpoints. Over the years, technology has had a dramatic impact on the way we teach special needs students and has led to many positive outcomes. Yet, as these innovative accommodations continue at an ever-increasing pace, we need to consider the risks involved as well. The question of technology's benefits and risks need to be looked at deeply as far as ethical, economical, political, and social implications. This debate is now more important than ever, given the outsized role that technology plays in all of our lives. Looking at the graph, the figure 1, you will see the productivity and tendencies within autism subsections of treatments and interventions research done by the Office of Autism Research Coordination and Thomson Reuters Incorporated. The pie graph on top illustrates relative proportions of research articles published in 2010 on 7 subcategories of ASD treatments and interventions research. And the line graph at the bottom shows the change in number of publications in each subcategory over time from 1910 to 2010. The most prolific areas include research on behavioral, medical, pharmacological, technology-based interventions and supports, and educational interventions. Our team has divided the task of debating the topic into 2 groups. One side will argue that technology has a predominantly positive impact in special education and ABA. The other side, which is the con, the other side will take an opposite stance on the use of technology in schools with special needs students, ABA, pro. Shelby will begin by examining the pro argument of how technology threatens the future of special education and ABA.
Until educators better understand how to implement the opportunities that technology affords, they will continue to struggle to find its place within best practices. Educators must offer a more stable foundation of how to incorporate technology as an effective instruction device. There is far too much insufficient evidence for a teacher to determine how much technology can be beneficial to each student and their individual special needs. There continues to not be enough research available on how much technology affects learning and life improvement during application. Educators, schools, and colleges resist models offering limited training to prepare them for real teaching. Without consistent teaching, follow-up, and available support, teachers find themselves lost and resistant to continue with the technology. And to add, Behrman and Scherer found technology that goes unused due to lack of training and devices insufficient for student needs, results in them leaving useless and money wasted. Technology is expensive, and when brought with little training, ends up on the shelf. This violates BACB Code 1.01 under responsible conduct of behavior analysts, reliance of scientific knowledge of ethics, when technology is not pre-tested or understood how it enhances a child or adult's life. Our team will be discussing technology as a whole and look into the effect that speech-generating devices have on the future of special education and ABA. We have decided to compare speech-generating devices with manual sign language. Through our research, we found manual sign language to be a more affordable and effective communication system for individuals with autism spectrum disorder.
Thank you, Shelby. Allie will now begin by examining the con argument of how technology threatens the future of special education and ABA.
In the U.S. Congress in 1966, policymakers were discussing the idea of how computer technology can support educational learning. not only for the affluent, but for all students in the classroom. Yet it has only been in the past 20 years that educators have conducted experiments to determine which technology devices and resources are most effective in supporting special needs students. A revolution was beginning in special education. In the mid-60s, teachers were experimenting with technology for students with special needs and how to support personnel and teachers with training for this technology. Once this technology arrived, there was no going backwards. Teachers increased technology use as a form of instruction, incorporating devices as learning tools rather than limiting them to only reference tools. Instructional accommodations using technology gave individual students with certain disabilities life experiences they would have not otherwise had. Technology has helped provide an improved quality of life for some individuals. Independence, positive peer interaction, and a reduced anxiety were some of the results shown among students incorporating technological devices into their lives. In rural environments lacking teacher resources, students are able to use virtual instruction for academic progress. Speech-generating devices exemplify just one of the advances in technology that are enhancing the future of special education and ABA. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid have defined a speech-generating device as a durable medical equipment that provides an individual who has a severe speech impairment with the ability to meet his or her functional speaking needs.
Thank you, Allie. Shelby will now examine the main points of pro-arguments of how technology threatens the future of special education and ABA.
Through our research, we found manual sign language to be a more affordable and effective communication system for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. According to Dexter et al., manual sign language can be accessed anywhere. Additionally, manual sign language provides an unlimited vocabulary, as there is no system to add words or icons to. Manual sign language allows individuals the ability to communicate without the need to break the bank. The cost of this method of communication is limited to any classes or books needed to advance vocabulary and/or skill set. As opposed to speech-generating devices, manual sign language is easy to access as there is no need to go through insurance. According to Medicare, speech-generating devices information, in order for a speech-generating device to be eligible for Medicare, it must be eligible for a Medicare benefit category, be reasonable and necessary for the diagnosis, meet all requirements of Medicare, and a formal evaluation must be conducted by a speech-language pathologist. Speech-generating devices can lose charge, become damaged, or get lost, making them an unreliable source of communication. As the device becomes unavailable, challenging behaviors may increase due to the lack of communication.
Thank you, Shelby. Allie will now examine the main points for con arguments of how technology threatens the future of special education and ABA.
Speech-generating devices are a more effective and empirically supported method of communication for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. Manual sign language for individuals with autism has produced limited research since the 1970s regarding its effectiveness for individuals. Supporting literature for manual sign language is primarily sourced from case studies, anecdotal reports, and weak group studies. Many studies indicated teaching sign language takes a long time and only a few signs are acquired at a time. Studies that evaluated preferences found that participants with autism spectrum disorder seldomly chose manual sign language as their preferred method of communication. In one study, 82% of participants chose a speech-generating device over other augmentative and alternative communication methods. There is strong statistical evidence supporting the use of a speech-generating device for individuals with autism spectrum disorder who also have a comorbid disorder, such as an intellectual or developmental disability. They can be affordable and easy to access with Medicare and Medicaid assistance, and most private insurances will help to cover the cost of a device. Additionally, multimedia devices such as iPads have provided an off-the-shelf alternative to expensive devices. The use of off-the-shelf devices with applications such as ProLoquo to Go have decreased the cost of owning a speech-generating device, as well as increasing the portability and reliability of the device. Utilizing a speech-generating device can increase speech for individuals who have low vocal abilities and help children learn the meaning of symbols. Individuals who are slowly acquiring speech have shown increases in skill when using a speech-generating device paired with a speech development program. Speech-generating devices paired with naturalistic behavioral interventions can result in an increase in verbal and nonverbal communication skills, as well as an increase in reciprocal social interactions. Increases in communication skills can help reduce the occurrences of challenging behaviors.
Thank you, Allie. Brielle is continuing by defending the pro-research and confronting the cons of the topic.
According to empirical studies evaluating speech and language intervention procedures applied to children with autism, manual sign language, as well as other communication methods, decrease maladaptive behavior by using these communication skills to serve the same message as their challenging behaviors. If speech-generating devices break or have technological problems, those children are not able to communicate and their maladaptive behavior will increase. For the maladaptive behavior, treatment plans and support plans are set in place to help work through them, as well as replace the challenging behaviors with functional language. With the new technology of communication and language, long-term treatment plans have become complex. This causes treatment plans to take longer, as well as come up with ways to use functional language to replace these challenging behaviors. Technology can cause a hinder in the availability and immediacy to communicate and reduce maladaptive behaviors.
Thank you, Brielle. Natalie is continuing by defending the con research and confronting the pros of the topic.
A 2012 study conducted by Mir et al. Demonstrated that participants preferred speech-generating devices over sign language. As far as acquisition and maintenance are concerned, the study concluded that speech-generating devices were the superior option. If speech-generating devices are unattainable due to financial barriers, Medicare has an assistance program to help alleviate the costs. ASHA.org lays out Medicare benefits along with easy-to-follow requirements on how to obtain financial assistance. If speech-generating devices are damaged, the application used for communication can be easily installed on other devices. In an instance where a device is broken or in need of repairs, other platforms such as smartphones and iPads can be used as a speech-generating device. In 2018, Conroy, Stichter, and Gage conducted a study that followed participants with speech-generating devices. When their speech-generating devices were in need of repairs, the participants utilized the speech-generating application on various platforms as a solution, so participants did not have to go without a means of communication.
Thank you, Natalie. Brielle will now defend the pro-research and confront the con of the topic.
To obtain insurance to cover a speech-generating device, families have to go through many obstacles to gain the coverage. They not only have to have an evaluation done by a speech pathologist, but they also need to meet the Medicare requirement and be proven necessary for treatment before families can even submit a request for funding to Medicare. And if that's not challenging enough, insurance doesn't pay for the device itself. Insurance only pays for the app and software use. Most recipients of speech-generating devices are insured their devices on a rent-to-own agreement. If a recipient of a speech-generating device becomes hospitalized, the payments from insurance to the supplier and manufacturer stop and are then used for the hospitalization cost. Because of this, the device is then returned due to insufficient payment. All of these obstacles can make for a long and hard process waiting for the device. Manual sign language can be taught face-to-face and can be used to communicate while waiting for a device.
Thank you, Brielle. Natalie will now defend the con research and confront the pro of the topic.
The American Journal of Speech Pathology, Language Pathology published a study by Barton, Housley et al. In 2017 that examined speech-generating devices for children with developmental delays in order to see if speech-generating devices assisted in learning symbols and meanings.
After 3 weeks of use, participants learned the meaning of 6 symbols through the use of speech-generating devices. In the same study, children learned noun vocabulary at a better rate than non-noun words. Barker et al. In 2018 cited a study of 62 children in 3 groups. Group 1, speech-generating device input users were parents. Group 2, speech-generating device output users were children. And in Group 3, visual verbal prompts were used to target an increase in vocabulary. Children in both speech-generating device groups 1 and 2 used more words that were targeted, as well as non-targeted words, than after intervention group number 3, which was speech only. The study stated that speech-generating devices do not hinder speech production, but speech-generating devices actually supplement speech production.
Thank you, Natalie. Brielle will defend the pro research and confront the con of the topic.
In a study by Hill and Flores in 2014, children were observed using an iPad and speech-generating device to communicate requests. The results that were found concluded that when children with autism were using the iPad, it was unclear if the child was actually requesting an item or responding to the sound that the iPad made when the child pressed the button. Using devices such as iPads can be distracting by playing with the voices and listening to them rather than using them to communicate. Teachers reported in this study that it was hard to keep accurate data with the iPads because there was no permanent product. The same research suggests that children with autism spectrum disorder should start with a more simple and less technological methods. Children should start simple with manual sign language or picture exchange communication system and work their way up to a more challenging communication form such as iPads. According to Case Nodden, a research study in 2002 on early intervention in sign language found that children who developed the most spoken language had well-developed sign language skills. The study also found that children who increased and improved their sign language ability had an increase in spoken language. Children who had little sign language or discontinued early intervention had lower rates of spoken language. Manual sign language and total communication training had more beneficial results in learning vocabulary for all participants.
Thank you, Brielle. Natalie will now defend the con research and confront a pro of the topic.
In 2018, the Journal of Speech, Language, and Hearing Research released a study by Thiemann Bork et al. That followed preschoolers with speech delays that used speech-generating devices. They taught peers without delays to use the speech-generating devices, which led to increases in intentional communication. Teachers recorded improvements in social communication, and school staff satisfaction also increased. Improvements in social communicative behavior reported by teachers and parents for the children were encouraging, and post-study surveys revealed a high degree of satisfaction by the school staff. There was a significant difference on one standardized language assessment in that children with autism spectrum disorder who had trained peers displayed a higher expressive language score at post-treatment than those with untrained peers. Outcomes from this study suggest that early childhood service providers might consider these instructional approaches to training peers in order to improve social communication competencies of peers without disabilities when planning speech-generating device interventions for preschool-age children with autism spectrum disorder. Young peers can be taught responsive play and speech-generating device communication strategies in a relatively short time with a high level of fidelity. In the same study, peers were successfully taught methods of communication. First, get the child's attention, then hold and wait. At the start of treatment, these strategies often resulted in routines where the child with autism spectrum disorder would primarily initiate communication to ask for objects. This method was taught to ask for objects, which also taught patterns of communication. These routines are important as they provide opportunities for practicing new communication skills. The study concluded that paraprofessional training in speech-generating devices should be increased. Econo, Trembath, and Erickson in 2016 found speech-generating devices to be useful in reducing challenging behaviors as a replacement behavior. And when introduced early enough, speech-generating devices can help children reduce learned helplessness. Literature goes as far as to indicate that individuals that are already improving in spoken word skills can benefit from speech-generating devices in comprehensive and language skills.
Thank you, Natalie. Brielle will now defend the con research and confront a pro of the topic.
In a study by Thiemann et al., 2018, also cites limitations to their study on the social implications of speech-generating devices. A follow-up study observed changes in communicative functions is forthcoming. It is worth noting that although staff in the comparison group often encouraged children with autism spectrum disorder to communicate to them using the speech-generating devices, the majority seldom prompted child and peer-directed communication. The study also revealed that students who use speech-generating devices receive less attention from teachers because they're interacting more with aides or therapists. On average, children had less than one peer use the child's device to interact with the child on a given day. In fact, according to teachers, 72% of participants had no classmates communicate with them using the child's augmentative communication system. The study fails to have significant study on children using speech-generating devices and their interactions with peers who do not have disabilities. Students using speech-generating devices will more than likely have to interact with other students who do not have any disabilities.
Thank you, Brielle. At this time, Shelby will be making pro-closing statement for technology threatens the future of special education and ABA.
Until changes take place in the Department of Education, students, teachers, and parents will continue to wrestle with the developing technology for the special need community and those who work with them. Incomplete research consistently is able to substantiate clear data showing any significant differences in achievement of learners across media or technologies because of poor designing of the research studies. Still, educators are willing to consume technology and incorporate it into the curriculum for special needs students and programs, often with little empirical basis to support day-to-day practices and even less theoretical understanding. It is too often special education programs begin to develop and purchase technological devices to support clientele in need, which is a beginning, but purchasing supportive devices without experimenting and knowing if it is useful to the client is financially wasteful and crosses the BACB Code of Ethics 3.01, stating that ABA will have used or be familiar with the type of assessments clients will need prior to making behavior changing programs or deciding what the needs are of the client. Each client has individual needs and there is no substitute to interpersonal instruction. Ludlow 2001 reinforces that students actually want someone, whether it be a teacher or teacher assistant, who's giving content in a creative fashion. Someone interesting, someone caring, more than they want to be taught using technology. Nothing beats a teacher who cares.
Thank you. Ellie will be making the con closing statement for technology threatens the future of special education and ABA.
Technology isn't going anywhere. If anything, it's become more prevalent in our everyday lives. Educators today are incorporating technology into classroom activities, skill building, lessons, and assessments. Students who are unable to communicate are communicating for the first time with teachers, parents, and peers. Students living in rural, isolated communities are now receiving instruction and student support via telecommunication. Without the support of technology, students would remain further isolated. Teachers are using technology elements such as internet programs, public television, email correspondence, training, and course modules to support their own professional development, as well as meeting the needs of students with individualized education plans or IEPs. However, even though some politicians and administrators consider technology as too expensive to buy, constantly changing, or training personnel being too cumbersome, the advantages of using it as a support element with special needs students outweighs the negative elements. Yes, technology is ever changing, and like the world itself, we must change with it.
Thank you, Ellie. Looking at the figure 2 below is a reminder technology is here to stay. An ABA, Applied Behavior Analyst, will be expected to use the research when making choices of what works best for the client. Figure 2 graph of research on autism and use of virtual reality. The virtual reality applications developed for autism spectrum disorder can be classified by the areas they focus on. The following categories were established for this review: communication and interaction, social learning and imitation skills, and other associated conditions. We will now be addressing a commonly asked questions. Number 1, audience questions. Are there different audible options for speech generating devices?
Yes, tools such as voice banking will record a large inventory of speech that will be synthesized to closely resemble the natural voice of the individual. These tools can even capture natural intonation and inflection.
Thank you. Does the introduction of speech generating devices increase negative behavior?
No. In fact, augmentative and alternative communication devices, such as a speech generating device, can help reduce the occurrence of challenging behaviors that result from deficits in communication.
Okay, thank you. Who is responsible for prescribing a speech generating device?
Speech pathologists or occupational therapists.
Okay, thank you. Number 4, is the use of SGDs stigmatizing for children in public schools?
No, a recent study by Hippo Martin et al. Found that when typically developing peers were assessed on their preference for which type of device they prefer their peers to have, they largely preferred a speech generating device.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, can the use of an SGD inhibit language for children who are slowly acquiring language?
No, individuals who are slowly acquiring speech have shown increases in skill when their programs for speech development are paired with a speech generating device.
Okay, thank you. Number 6, will I own the device when my insurance pays, or will it be rented?
Speech generating devices are usually provided on a rent-to-own basis through insurance companies. Insurances make payments to the supplier until it is completely paid off. Once it is paid off, families will own the speech generating device.
Okay, thank you. And number 7, will manual sign language keep my child from trying to use vocals and learn spoken language?
No, research has found that children who learn manual sign language actually have more verbal and spoken language. The more advanced their skill, the more advanced their spoken language.
Okay, thank you. That will conclude our presentation. Thank you.